Thanks, Levan, for joining us and helping us to explain and to get a better idea, clearer idea what is happening in Georgia over this week. So I'm going to start by pointing out to the statement of 21 non-governmental organizations that was released a couple of days ago, and it has a very strong signal of condemnation what happened with Rustavi 2 and the takeover following the Supreme Court decision, and it says basically that all those organizations and non-governmental people, they think that this decision damages not only the further democratic development of Georgia, but limits freedom of media, pluralistic media environment, and threatens Euro-Atlantic integration process. I want to start by hearing your assessment, whether or not you agree with the civil society in Georgia with that kind of a harsh statement on the Rustavi 2 takeover.
Well, I think the whole dispute over the ownership of the Rustavi 2 channel does indeed raise concerns over the right to freedom of expression in Georgia and could indeed jeopardize media pluralism in the country. Now, I think we can all agree that we should hold Georgia accountable to a very high standard, largely because this country is the island within the region where actually freedom of speech and freedom of expression and media pluralism has more or less been respected. And I believe the concerns that the civil society has in Georgia, that this whole lawsuit against Rustavi 2 has been politically motivated, is rather credible. And there are three main factors that actually lead to this assessment. Now, the first is that high officials from the Georgian government have in the past openly expressed support in favor of the former shareholder, the shareholder who actually brought the lawsuit, while the shareholder himself has openly endorsed the current government's policies on many issues. Second issue is that the Georgian NGOs who were monitoring the trials and the developments, the court hearings and the developments around the case, have said that the lower instance courts lacked clear and consistent legal argumentation in their decisions, and there were also some procedural violations. And thirdly, in 2016, as the court as the case was still ongoing in the courts, threats were made against the current executive director of Rustavi 2, and as he claimed, these were the threats by the security services of Georgia, blackmailing him with release of covertly filmed videos.
Levan, there is no doubt that there is a lack of transparency for the whole process, but look, what strikes me the most in this case is this that both sides, civil society and international allies, regarding the situation in Georgia, regarding, as you rightly point out, that it's a poster example for the post-Soviet world, tying to the process of Euro integration. The balance is very tricky one, because at one point you see those statements from civil society saying that there's lack of transparency, that the decision is not of high quality, but on the other hand, you have statements from U.S. Embassy and EU mission saying that the most important thing at this point is not to damage the credibility of the justice system in Georgia and not to undermine it. How do you balance those two important things?
Well, I think largely because of the lack of transparency and because of the concerns that were made by the civil society, these concerns seem quite credible. To a certain degree, the image of the judiciary in Georgia has been damaged, unfortunately, and this has been further reinforced by the very recent decision of the European Court of Human Rights, which actually decided to endorse the interim measures on the case of Rustavi 2 and urged the Georgian government to actually not execute the judgment of the Supreme Court of Georgia until the European Court of Human Rights has the time to look into the case. Now, the European Court does not often resort to this type of interim measures. This means that the court could have some preliminary doubts on how the case was dealt in Georgia. In the long term and in the short term, that will damage the credibility of judiciary in the country. And this is why it is extremely important that now the Georgian government does everything possible to ensure that the legal dispute that is still ongoing, because the Constitutional Court of Georgia should also look into this now, as well as the European Court of Human Rights, that this legal dispute continues without any type of political pressure or any type of external influences whatsoever.
So tell me, is this the way out, in your opinion, from this whole mess? Just making sure that the transition, whatever it is, whether to former owner or to the team of journalists, is transparent and is in line with law, or what other creative solutions can be to this really deadlocked situation?
Well, I think yes. The most important thing is that the authorities in Georgia should ensure that this dispute is dealt as a legal dispute without any type of external or political pressures. And therefore, they should create an environment in which it will be hard to perceive that there is some type of political pressure on the judges or some types of statements made by the government officials that could actually be considered as statements encouraging a particular side of the dispute. In addition, they must investigate the alleged threats that were made against the management of Rustavi in 2016 when the case was ongoing. And by effectively investigating those threats, they could actually prove that they're willing to create the environment in which the judiciary can be independent, impartial, and actually make an independent and impartial judgment on this very tricky case.
Levan, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us and explaining us the situation.
Thank you.